The glass walls of coal industries towered over Manhattan like monuments to ambition, cold, perfect, untouchable. Anderson Cole had spent 15 years building this empire, brick by brick, deal by deal, convinced that intelligence and ruthlessness were the only currencies that mattered. Tonight, standing in his corner office as bankruptcy warnings flashed across every screen, he was learning how wrong he'd been. 8 hours. That's all he had left before the $15 billion IPO launch that was supposed to crown his legacy. 8 hours before every financial institution on Wall Street discovered his company's systems were bleeding data like a severed artery. The cyber attack was surgical, sophisticated, someone who knew exactly where to cut. His phone buzzed with unanswered calls. His CFO wasn't responding. Marcus Whitfield, his mentor and business partner, had gone silent an hour ago. The engineering team he'd paid millions had sent their final text, "We can't stop it. I'm sorry." He was alone. Then he heard it, the soft squeak of wheels on polished marble, rubber gloves, the rhythmic sound of a cleaning cart. Anderson turned to see her, a black woman in a navy janitorial uniform, yellow gloves still wet from scrubbing toilets he'd never thought about. Her name tag read Brenda, though he'd passed her in these halls for 3 years without ever reading it. "Mr. Cole," her voice cut through his panic, steady as stone. "You look like a man who's run out of options." He almost laughed, almost. "Unless you can hack quantum encryption, I don't think." "I can." 2 words, the floor shifted beneath him. Her dark eyes held something he'd spent his whole life convinced didn't exist in people like her. Certainty, not hope, not luck, mastery. "Who are you?" he whispered. She set down her mop and walked toward his desk, each step deliberate. "Someone you've been looking past your entire life, Mr. Cole. Someone who's about to decide whether you deserve saving." The red alerts had started innocently, a single warning buried in lines of code. Alina Zhao, his lead security engineer, flagged during final pre-IPO diagnostics. Anderson had been in the boardroom then, surrounded by congratulations and champagne, listening to Marcus Whitfield toast, the student who surpassed the teacher. That felt like a lifetime ago. It had been 4 hours. Now alone in his office, Anderson Cole stared at the screen displaying his company's vital signs flatlining in real time. Every firewall breached, every backup protocol corrupted, every security measure he'd paid top dollar for useless. The algorithm his team had spent 3 years developing, the revolutionary AI that could predict market crashes before they happened, the technology that made this IPO worth $15 billion, was being copied, packet by packet, to a server location his systems couldn't trace. He'd built Cole Industries from nothing, from a kid in a Detroit public school who taught himself to code on library computers to the cover of Forbes before his 35th birthday. The story everyone loved. Self-made billionaire, genius CEO, disruptor of industries. But tonight, that story was being erased. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 10,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these stories matter, and tell me where you are watching from in the comments section. Please subscribe to Beyond Hope and Belief, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. His designer suit clung to his back with cold sweat. His third espresso sat untouched, a bitter film forming on top. His reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window showed a man he barely recognized, hair disheveled, eyes hollow, the confidence that usually armored him completely stripped away. "Who are you without this?" the question whispered through his mind like. 3 floors below, Brenda Luke pushed her cleaning cart through the empty executive wing, the wheels squeaking their familiar rhythm against marble that cost more per square foot than her monthly rent. Navy uniform, yellow rubber gloves, industrial-strength cleaner that made her eyes water. This was her armor now, the costume of invisibility she'd worn for 3 years, ever since the day her entire life had been incinerated by telling the truth. Her hands moved automatically, spray, wipe, move, while her mind ran through the code she'd been teaching Marcus Jr. That morning, her son, 14 years old, brilliant enough to get into Bronx science but forced to navigate a world that would judge him before he opened his mouth. "Mom, why do you clean toilets when you're so smart?" he'd asked last week, voice breaking between childhood and something harder. "Sometimes, baby, being smart isn't enough. Sometimes staying alive means staying small." She'd believed that. For 3 years, she'd believed invisibility was survival. But as she passed Anderson Cole's office and saw the screens painting his face in crimson emergency light, something old stirred in her chest. Something she thought she'd killed the day they revoked her NSA security clearance, the day they destroyed her name across every database in Washington, the day they made sure Brenda Luke would never work in cybersecurity again. She knew that code signature flashing across his monitors. She'd seen it before, in classified briefings, in midnight war rooms, in the corruption case that had ended her career and nearly ended her life. Brenda stopped, set down her spray bottle, stared at the man who'd walked past her 1,000 times without seeing her. "You could keep walking," the survivor in her whispered. "This isn't your problem. You have Marcus Jr. to protect. You have rent due. You have invisibility to maintain." But the engineer, the whistleblower, the woman who'd once believed systems could be fixed, she was still alive somewhere beneath the uniform. Brenda Luke took a breath and walked through the door. Anderson didn't hear her enter. He was staring at his phone, at the string of unanswered messages to Marcus Whitfield, his mentor, his partner, the man who'd believed in him when no one else had. "Where are you when I need you most?" "Mr. Cole." He spun. The janitor stood in his doorway, really stood, not hunched or apologetic or trying to make herself smaller the way he vaguely remembered service staff doing. She stood like she belonged. He blinked, disoriented. "You shouldn't be in here. I'm dealing with a zero-day exploit targeting your quantum encryption layer through a backdoor in your third-party authentication module." Her voice was quiet but precise as a scalpel. "Whoever's hitting you knows your infrastructure better than your own team does." The words hit him like cold water. "What did you just?" Anderson's mind stuttered, trying to reconcile the woman in the janitorial uniform with the technical accuracy of what she just said. "How could you possibly?" "Because I designed protocols like yours for 8 years at the NSA." Brenda pulled off her yellow gloves, one finger at a time. "And because the signature on that attack matches code I flagged in a corruption investigation 3 years ago, code that powerful people wanted buried." She walked closer. Anderson found himself stepping back. "You have 2 choices, Mr. Cole." Her dark eyes held his, unflinching. "You can keep treating me like I'm invisible and watch your company die in." She glanced at the countdown timer on his screen, 7 hours and 34 minutes. "Or you can give me system access and let me show you what you've been too blind to see." Anderson's throat went dry. Every instinct screamed this was insane. She was a janitor, he didn't know her, couldn't verify her, couldn't trust. The screen behind him flashed. "Critical system failure, 6 hours to IPO launch." "Why?" The question escaped before he could stop it. "Why would you help me? I don't even know your name." Something flickered across her face. Pain, maybe, or recognition of the wound his words had just exposed. "My name is Brenda Luke." She said it slowly, like teaching a child. "I've cleaned your office every Tuesday and Thursday for 3 years. I've seen you throw away more money in catered lunches than I make in a month. I've watched you treat genius engineers like servants and actual servants like we don't exist." She paused, letting the indictment settle. "So why help you? Not because you deserve it. Because that attack signature is connected to people who have spent 3 years making sure I stay invisible, and I'm tired of hiding." Anderson stared at her, at Brenda, at the woman whose name he'd never asked. The screens behind him screamed red warnings. His company was dying. His legacy was ashes. And the only person offering salvation was someone he'd never bothered to see. He pulled his admin access card from his wallet with shaking hands. "Show me," he whispered. Brenda Luke took the card, her fingers steady, and sat down at his $50,000 executive desk. "Welcome to what real genius looks like, Mr. Cole," she said, fingers already flying across the keyboard. "Try not to blink. You might miss your own education." The champagne had gone flat an hour ago, but Anderson Cole could still taste the bitterness on his tongue. Earlier that evening, he'd stood before his board of directors, 12 of the most powerful investors in Silicon Valley, and delivered what was supposed to be his coronation speech. "Ladies and gentlemen," he'd said, voice resonant with certainty, "tomorrow we don't just disrupt the future, we own it." They'd applauded. Marcus Whitfield, his mentor and business partner, had raised a crystal glass and offered a toast that made Anderson's chest swell with pride. To the student who surpassed the teacher. The room had erupted in celebration. $15 billion. That's what Wall Street said Cole Industries was worth. 15 billion reasons Anderson Cole had been right about everything. That was 6 hours ago. Now at 10:47 p.m. his company was dying. The first warning had appeared at 8:00 p.m. Buried in diagnostic code, his lead engineer Alina Zhao was running as a final pre-IPO safety check. "Anderson, I'm seeing unusual traffic patterns," she'd said, her voice tight with concern. "Someone's probing our authentication layer." He'd told her to strengthen the firewalls, certain his billion-dollar security infrastructure could handle anything. By 9:47 p.m., the probing had become a full-scale breach. Someone wasn't just inside their quantum encryption protocols. They were systematically copying the proprietary AI algorithms that made this IPO valuable. The technology Anderson's team had spent 3 years perfecting, the breakthrough that could predict market crashes before they happened, was bleeding out of his servers like arterial spray. Alina had tried everything. Every countermeasure failed, every backup corrupted. At 10:30 p.m. she'd sent her final message. "I'm sorry, Anderson. Whoever this is, they're better than us. We can't stop it." He'd sent everyone home after that. Couldn't bear watching the fear spread across their faces as they realized the IPO would fail, that by morning Cole Industries would be worthless, that 12,000 jobs were evaporating in real time. Now Anderson sat alone in his corner office, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the city lights like scattered diamonds. His designer suit clung to his back with cold sweat. His hands trembled as he stared at the countdown timer. 6 hours 13, minutes 2, IPO launch. The glass showed his reflection, a stranger with hollow eyes and disheveled hair, stripped of the armor of confidence he'd worn his entire adult life. "Who are you without this?" he whispered to the ghost in the window. Then he heard it, the soft squeak of wheels on marble, the rhythmic sound of something rolling closer. Anderson turned. A black woman in a navy janitorial uniform stood in his doorway, yellow rubber gloves still dripping cleaning solution, pushing a cart he'd never bothered to notice in 3 years of walking these halls. Her dark eyes met his, steady and unafraid, holding something he couldn't name. "Mr. Cole," she said quietly, her voice cutting through his panic like a blade through silk. "You look like you could use some help." Anderson's laugh came out harsh, brittle. "Unless you can hack quantum encryption, I don't think." "I can." 2 words, the floor shifted beneath him. He blinked, certain he'd misheard. This woman, the cleaning lady, was offering to fix what his team of MIT graduates couldn't. The absurdity would have been funny if his entire world wasn't collapsing. "Look, I appreciate the gesture," he said, voice dripping with dismissal, "but this is a sophisticated cyber attack. I need actual engineers, not Someone who understands zero-day exploits targeting quantum encryption layers through backdoors in third-party authentication modules. She pulled off her yellow gloves, one finger at a time. That's what you're facing, Mr. Cole. Whoever's hitting you knows your infrastructure better than your own team does. The technical precision of her words hit him like ice water. Anderson's mind stuttered, trying to reconcile the woman in the janitorial uniform with what she just said. How could you possibly? Because I designed protocols like yours for 8 years at the NSA. She walked closer, and Anderson found himself stepping back. And because the signature on that attack matches code I flagged in a corruption investigation 3 years ago, code that powerful people wanted buried. Her dark eyes held his unflinching. Anderson's throat went dry. Every instinct screamed this was insane. He didn't know her, couldn't verify her, couldn't trust. The screen behind him flashed. Critical system failure, 5HOURS47 MINUTES. Why? The question escaped before he could stop it. Why would you help me? I don't even know your name. Something flickered across her face. Pain, maybe, or recognition of a wound his words had just exposed. My name is Brenda Luke, she said slowly, like teaching a child. I've cleaned your office every Tuesday and Thursday for 3 years. I've watched you throw away more money in catered lunches than I make in a month. I've seen you treat genius engineers like servants and actual servants like we don't exist. She paused, letting the indictment settle. So why help you? Not because you deserve it, because that attack signature connects to people who have spent 3 years making sure I stay invisible, and I'm tired of hiding. Anderson stared at her, at Brenda, at the woman whose name he'd never asked. His company was dying, his legacy was ashes, and the only person offering salvation was someone he'd never bothered to see. With shaking hands, he pulled his admin access card from his wallet and held it out. Show me, he whispered. Brenda took the card, sat down at his $50,000 desk, and her fingers began flying across the keyboard with a precision that made his breath catch. For 6 hours, Anderson watched her work, watched her navigate his systems with an elegance his team had never possessed, building diagnostic tools in real time, tracking the attack's signature through layers of encryption. At 4:17 a.m., the red warnings finally stopped. The bleeding slowed. The system stabilized. Brenda leaned back, exhaustion etched across her face. Your system's breathing again, Mr. Cole, but this wasn't random. Someone who knows you intimately did this. Anderson's voice came out raw. Who are you really? Brenda looked at him, her eyes carrying years of weight he was only beginning to understand. Someone who used to matter. Morning light streamed through the windows as employees began arriving, their confusion palpable when they found systems functioning that should have been dead. Anderson called an emergency board meeting for 9:00 a.m., and this time he insisted someone new attend. This is highly irregular, board member Richard Chen protested when Brenda walked into the conference room, still wearing her Navy uniform because she hadn't had time to go home. So is being saved by someone you've overlooked for 3 years, Anderson replied, his voice carrying an edge that silenced the room. But while Anderson defended her presence to skeptical executives, Brenda's mind was elsewhere, in a small apartment in the Bronx where her teenage son Marcus Jr. was getting ready for school alone, wondering why his mother hadn't come home. She'd texted him at 5 a.m., working late, baby. There's oatmeal in the microwave, I love you. Marcus Jr. had replied, Mom, why do you clean offices when you're so smart? The question had cracked something inside her. Sometimes being smart isn't enough, baby, she typed back. But the real answer was more complicated, more painful. 3 years ago, Brenda Luke had been senior cybersecurity analyst at the NSA, with top-level clearance and a reputation as one of the best threat assessment specialists in the agency. Then she discovered something she wasn't supposed to find, a pattern of fraudulent billing in government contracts worth $800 million, all funneled through a defense contractor called Sentinel Defense Systems. She'd reported it through proper channels, believing the system would work. Instead, the system destroyed her. Within 2 weeks, her security clearance was revoked under questions of loyalty. Her credibility was attacked through whisper campaigns. Internal emails surfaced, fabricated, she knew, but convincing, suggesting she'd leaked classified information. The investigation she'd triggered was quietly buried, and Brenda Luke, whistleblower, became Brenda Luke, security risk. No company in cybersecurity would touch her after that. Her name was poison in every database that mattered. She had a 6-month-old son and mounting debt from her late husband's medical bills. So she did what survivors do. She disappeared into the invisible workforce, taking a job that asked no questions and demanded only that she stay small. Ms. Luke, Marcus Whitfield's voice pulled her back to the present. Anderson's mentor was watching her with an expression that seemed supportive but made something in her spine tighten. This is extraordinary, a janitor saving the company. But Anderson, are we sure we can trust someone with no verifiable background? The words were carefully chosen, reasonable on the surface. But Brenda heard what he wasn't saying. She's nobody. She's suspicious. She's dangerous. I trust her, Anderson said, and the certainty in his voice surprised even him. She saved this company when no one else could. He turned to Brenda. I want to offer you the position of Director of Cybersecurity. The room erupted in protests. Brenda felt her chest constrict. You don't know what you're asking, she said quietly. The people I ran from, if they know I'm visible again. Anderson met her eyes. Then I'll make sure you're protected. You saved my company. Let me save you. 3 weeks passed in a blur of media coverage and recovery efforts. Tech giant survives cyber attack hours before IPO became the story everyone wanted to tell. The rescheduled launch date was set. Coal Industries was back from the dead. But for Anderson, something fundamental had shifted. He'd started seeing people he'd never noticed before. The night security guard who'd worked there 5 years, the woman who restocked the kitchen supplies, the maintenance crew that kept the building running. He asked their names, learned their stories, and each conversation revealed a world he'd been blind to. Did you know, he said to Brenda one evening as they worked late, that half our support staff don't have health insurance, that we classify them as non-essential so we don't have to provide benefits? Brenda looked up from her code analysis. I know, I was one of them for 3 years. The shame that crossed his face was genuine. But while Anderson was learning to see, Brenda was discovering something that made her hands shake as she typed. The attack pattern she'd been analyzing, tracking every entry point, every timestamp, every digital fingerprint, revealed something impossible. The hacker had accessed a ghost admin account created 8 months ago, an account that shouldn't exist, buried so deep in the system that even Anderson's security team hadn't found it. And the access logs showed something that made Brenda's blood run cold. The account had been accessed from Marcus Whitfield's secure office. Anderson, she said quietly, you need to see this. He came to stand behind her chair, reading the evidence on the screen. She watched his face change, denial, confusion, then something breaking. No, he said. Marcus mentored me. He's like a father. There has to be another explanation. But there wasn't. The deeper Brenda dug, the clearer it became. For nearly a year, Marcus had been systematically transferring Anderson's proprietary AI algorithms to offshore servers. The attack hadn't been meant to destroy the company. It had been designed to tank the IPO price so Marcus could execute a hostile takeover, buying Anderson's life's work for pennies on the dollar. He was never trying to save you, Brenda said softly. He was positioning himself to own you. Anderson sank into a chair, his face ashen. The man he'd trusted most, the mentor who'd believed in him when no one else had had been planning his destruction all along. The next morning, Marcus's personal assistant quit without notice. She left an anonymous note on Brenda's desk. "He knows that she knows. Get out while you can." The media loved a redemption story. From janitor to CTO, the Brenda Luke story appeared in the Wall Street Journal. Forbes ran a profile. TechCrunch called her the invisible genius who saved Silicon Valley's hottest IPO. Every article included her photo. Every headline broadcast her name. Every interview made her more visible. And visibility, Brenda knew, was dangerous. Marcus Jr. noticed the black SUV first. 3 days in a row, the same vehicle parked across from his school, windows tinted, engine running. He was 14, smart enough to recognize when something was wrong. "Mom, there's a car that's been following me," he said on the phone, trying to sound brave but unable to hide the tremor in his voice. Brenda's world stopped. That night an encrypted email arrived. No sender, no trace, just a photo of Marcus Jr., leaving school and a message: "Stay quiet or lose what matters most." The fear that gripped her chest was primal, absolute. She'd known this would happen, known that stepping into the light would paint a target on everything she loved. The government contractors she'd exposed, Sentinel Defense Systems, had lost $800 million when their fraud was revealed. They'd waited 3 years for revenge. And now, through deeper investigation, she discovered the connection that made her blood freeze. Marcus Whitfield's offshore shell companies were subsidiaries of Sentinel Defense Systems. This had never been just about Anderson's company. Marcus had given Sentinel access to Anderson's revolutionary AI technology in exchange for their help destroying both Anderson and Brenda, the two people who threatened their empire of corruption. "I have to leave," Brenda told Anderson at midnight, packing her desk with shaking hands. "I should have stayed invisible. My son is in danger because I thought I could matter again." Anderson stood in the doorway, blocking her exit. "You matter because you exist, not because of what you do, and your son needs to see his mother stand, not run." "You don't understand." "I understand that I spent my whole life believing I had to be superior to matter," Anderson interrupted. "I understand that I was wrong about everything, and I understand that I'll protect Marcus Jr. I'll protect you. I have resources they can't match." Brenda looked at him, really looked, and saw something she'd never expected. Not pity, not obligation, conviction. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you risk everything for us?" "Because you saved my life when I'd never bothered to learn your name," Anderson said quietly. "Let me earn the second chance you gave me." By morning, Marcus Jr. had a security detail that made Secret Service protection look casual. Former federal agents, the best money could buy, stationed at his school and apartment. Anderson had called in every favor he had. Meanwhile, his legal team began quietly dismantling Marcus Whitfield's financial empire, tracing shell corporations through offshore accounts, documenting every illegal transfer, every fraudulent contract, every connection to Sentinel Defense Systems. "Look at this," Brenda said late one night, her eyes burning from hours of code analysis. "Marcus isn't planning to stop. He's planning to trigger the final attack during the IPO itself, live, on CNBC Maximum Humiliation." Anderson leaned over her shoulder, studying the evidence. "Then we let him think he's winning, and we expose everything when the whole world is watching." Their partnership had deepened over these weeks, professional respect evolving into something neither had expected: trust, connection, the recognition of two people who'd saved each other. "I spent my whole life proving I was better than everyone," Anderson admitted during a rare break. "But I was just alone. You showed me I was looking at the wrong thing." Brenda's voice was soft. "I spent years believing invisibility kept me safe, but it was just another cage." The investigation revealed one more betrayal. CFO Jennifer Park had been feeding Marcus information from inside the company. Her motivation, when they uncovered it, was painfully human. Marcus had promised her the CEO position after Anderson's fall. She was tired of being the woman who does the work while men get the glory. Anderson felt the weight of what his leadership had created. My company culture made enemies I never saw. Then change it, Brenda said simply. They had 48 hours until the IPO. Marcus's final move was imminent, and this time they were ready. CNBC cameras filled the lobby of Cole Industries like mechanical insects, their lenses hungry for the story everyone had been waiting for. Hundreds of investors packed the space, watching stock tickers that would determine fortunes. At 9:30 a.m., trading would begin. By 10:00 a.m., everyone would know if Anderson Cole's comeback was real. In a secure location across the city, Marcus Jr. sat with his security team, watching his mother on a dozen monitors. Anderson took the stage, the lights hot on his face. Marcus Whitfield stood in the crowd, smug certainty radiating from every pore. He thought he'd won. "Ladies and gentlemen," Anderson began, his voice steady. "Thank you for being here on this historic." The stock ticker flashed green. Trading had begun. Initial price, $87 per share, surging toward $90. Anderson went off script. "Before we continue, there's something you need to know about how this company almost died." The room went silent. Confused glances ricocheted between investors. Behind Anderson, the massive screens lit up with evidence: emails, financial transfers, offshore account records. Marcus Whitfield's face went pale. "3 weeks ago," Anderson continued, his voice carrying across the stunned crowd, "my mentor and business partner orchestrated a cyber attack designed to destroy this company. Not for competition, not for money, but because he'd already sold us, sold our technology, our innovation, our future, to a corrupt defense contractor called Sentinel Defense Systems." Gasps erupted. CNBC anchors scrambled to process what they were hearing. The stock price wavered, confused algorithms trying to price unprecedented honesty. In the crowd, Marcus tried to leave. FBI agents Anderson had secretly coordinated with blocked every exit. In the server room, Jennifer Park attempted to delete evidence remotely. Brenda's countermeasures locked her out, preserving everything. Marcus's fury finally exploded. He shoved toward the stage, his voice raw with rage. "I made you. You were nothing without me." Anderson met his eyes without flinching. "No, you taught me what not to become." He gestured to Brenda, standing calm and certain at the edge of the stage. "And she taught me what real strength looks like." Then Anderson did something no CEO had ever done during an IPO launch. He announced he was restructuring the entire company, profit sharing for all employees, living wages, promotion pathways for every worker regardless of title. The Invisible Genius Initiative would actively seek talent society had overlooked. The stock price plummeted, investors panicked. Then something unexpected happened. Social media exploded with support. Workers across industries shared stories of their own invisible genius. The public, starving for authentic leadership, responded with their wallets. The stock price surged past $100. FBI agents led Marcus and Jennifer away in handcuffs. On the monitors, Brenda saw her son safe, smiling, proud. Anderson's quiet triumph wasn't in the stock price. It was in finally seeing clearly. Within 24 hours, the story had gone viral worldwide. Tech CEO exposes betrayal live on CNBC dominated every news cycle. But it was from janitor to CTO, the Brenda Luke story that captured hearts. Workers across industries began sharing their own stories. The PhD working as an Uber driver because no one would hire an immigrant. The former lawyer cleaning houses after a felony conviction for a crime she didn't commit. The genius hiding in plain sight because society had decided she didn't count. Brenda's vindication came swiftly. Sentinel Defense Systems executives were arrested on federal charges. Her NSA whistleblower case was reopened, and this time people listened. Her name was cleared, her reputation restored. But the moment that mattered most happened in a safe house across the city, where Anderson sat teaching Marcus Jr. to code, genuinely interested in the boy's ideas, treating him like the brilliant mind he was. "Mr. Cole," Marcus Jr. asked quietly, "why do you care about us now?" Anderson's answer was honest. "Because your mother taught me that who I ignore says more about me than who I see." Back at Cole Industries, the Invisible Genius Initiative began its work. Security guard Ramon Torres revealed he was a former aerospace engineer who'd lost his credentials during immigration complications. Anderson funded his recertification. Kitchen staff member Sarah Chen mentioned her daughter's coding talent. She became the company's youngest intern. Brenda's role evolved beyond CTO. She became Chief Dignity Officer, ensuring every person in the company was seen and valued. 6 months later, Cole Industries had become the most sought-after employer in the tech industry. Productivity had increased 40% because people felt valued. Innovation flourished because diverse perspectives were finally heard. Anderson and Brenda's bond deepened, not romantic, but something more profound. Chosen family built on mutual recognition and respect. "I almost lost everything," Anderson told her one evening, "but what I found was worth more than what I could have lost." 1 year later, Anderson Cole walked through Cole Industries headquarters knowing every employee's name, not as performance, but as genuine connection. He stopped to talk with Maria, the night custodian who'd once been invisible to him. "How's your daughter's scholarship application?" he asked, knowing he'd funded the education program that made it possible. "She got in," Maria said, tears in her eyes. "Full ride to MIT. She's going to be an engineer." "She already is," Anderson replied. "She just needed someone to see it." The board meeting that afternoon would have been unrecognizable to the Anderson of a year ago. Former skeptics now championed the dignity model. Profits and people were both thriving. Other companies had begun copying their approach, creating a movement that was spreading across industries. That evening, Anderson delivered a TED Talk that would be viewed 50 million times. "I thought power meant being above everyone," he told the audience. "But real power is lifting everyone up. I was blind until a woman I'd ignored for 3 years saved my life, not just my company, my life." The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. In the audience, Brenda sat with Marcus Jr., both beaming with pride. Afterward, on the rooftop where this had all begun, Brenda and Anderson stood watching the city lights. "Do you remember that night?" Anderson asked. "How could I forget? You were terrified and trying to hide it. I saw you, Anderson. Maybe for the first time someone saw you too." "We saved each other," he said quietly. In the transformation lab, the renamed server room, they found Marcus Jr. teaching coding to younger students, his excitement palpable as he explained algorithms. "I spent years hiding because I thought visibility meant danger," Brenda reflected. "But invisibility was its own death." "And I spent years thinking I had to be superior to matter," Anderson added. "But I only started mattering when I learned to see." Marcus Jr. looked up at them. "So you're saying everyone matters?" Both adults smiled. "Exactly." The camera pulled back, showing the entire office. People of every background working together, laughing, valued, seen. Not a hierarchy, a community. Anderson's voiceover carried over the final image. The revolution wasn't in the technology. It was in remembering we're all human, and that the people society ignores often carry the wisdom to save us all. The screen faded to a simple call to action. Look around your life. Who have you stopped seeing? What genius are you ignoring? The invisible are waiting. All you have to do is look. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please do well to like, share, comment, and most especially subscribe. And turn on your notification for my next upload.